do we have some questions?
Yes, we do, Peter. Thank you so very much. So if you have any questions, please enter them in your questions pane, and we will try to get to as many of the questions as we can. So we have a question from Francine. She asks, from a quality perspective in regulated environments, is that all that's needed for requirements engineering, or do we need more?
Well, this is a little bit what I said in that slide where I said that we need to have a quality and defined processes, and if you have defined processes, then we need to tailor them to the specific needs, and we need to map that to the reference models, and then we need to show how we do the practicing. This was very at the beginning where I showed different reference models, and if you have that in place, you're pretty fine with that, and you know what you're doing, because what an auditor usually wants to see, they only want to see that you know what you're doing, you do what you say, and you have done so, and that you can prove that. This is all what you want to see, and this is what it needs. I hope this answers the question. Otherwise, please ask again. Miriam, are there other questions?
Yeah, and I think a relevant question with regard to technology that helps us to do these things. So Michael asks, how do the off-shelf products like Jira, for example, map to the Epic and the stories on the data model that you showed? And then do you find that some map better than others with regard to compliance?
Yeah, in our opinion, that was our experience at Credit Suisse. You know, when you have like 9,500 developers, if we talk about Jira, we are talking about tools. And in the model which I showed, we just say there are stories, or there are features and capabilities, and they have a relation, and this is the consistent part of a life cycle. Now we can say that some teams, they work with Jira, other with Team Foundation Service, but they have the same understanding of how that relates. And what we did, and what you can do now is you can say, hey, we have 3 or 4 different standard tools in a company, and the teams can choose which they want to use out of the past of the existing code, for example, existing documentation, to use that tool or another tool, but they still have the same domain model in mind. So I would strongly recommend that you differentiate between what you're doing, the work products, the objects, the solution objects, and how you represent them in tools. And this can be done with various different tools in place. I hope this answers the questions. I know that the reality is sometimes complex. We had 4 standard requirements management tools in one leading Swiss financial institute, and we still managed to have like 5 exceptions to other tools. So we had always a lot of different tools for the same work to do.
Okay, now, Peter, we have a more global question with regard to SAFe. So Pankaj asked, with SAFe advocating for built-in quality within the Agile teams, where do the quality departments fit in, especially with regard to compliance?
Mm-hmm. The quality department fits in on an enterprise level. This is the small button where you look at the Scaled Agile framework. I can show. I can turn off the camera. Turn on the camera now again. I hope you see me. You see here the big picture, the full SAFe configuration, and up here is the enterprise. And of course, here you have the whole organization for the quality management departments. They have the processes of how to develop the processes for all the levels, how they can build the quality in the teams, but you have to define those mappings to the reference models, the activities, the work products in all those life cycles, the roles. This is done by the quality management department here on the enterprise level. And of course, they're doing also process assessments and training and skills management and all that stuff. So this is usually represented on the enterprise level. Of the example for applied SAFe, our biggest level is the enterprise level and not the other levels in SAFe. And this is what it needs in regulated environments? This is a really good question. Thank you very much. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Are there other questions?
Okay, so we have another question related to kind of the higher level. Matthew asks, how do you come about a single roadmap and vision, and how do you share that architecture and delivery for a large enterprise, say a bank?
How do I share a vision?
And maybe we can limit the question to, you know, with regard to compliance, so let's say in a financial institution.
A vision, this is something that I haven't seen so much that how to do it, that there are specific definitions of how this is done. Usually this is just some kind of words and a document. But what I see strongly is the software architecture. This is something that is quite defined. And what we use several times is that we either refer to the ESPMA framework, the International Standard for Process Management, or the TOGAF, the description, which is from the Software Engineering Institute in Pittsburgh. And the TOGAF model describes of how you should document and define your architecture. And on the architecture level, I think it's pretty much well defined. On the vision level, it's more or less open space which you can conquer. You just define it with pictures and text. This is my experience. Hope that helps a little bit for that question.
Okay, Peter, now we have a kind of a specific question on one of the slides that you presented. Prasad asks, in the example of the model that had the blue and the orange objects where you were defining the architecture, are the product names always the same?
Yes, that if possible. We try for that when we define such a model. And that model you have seen, that was basically the first version was based on the iterative approach. This was based on the rational unified process some years ago. And we took that as the leading names, and we had so-called a translation table, which was underneath the model for the various names in the different life cycles. For example, in waterfall, we ask for a so-called a risk list. That was a defined artifact. And in Agile, you don't have risk lists, but of course you're dealing with risks. And this is something that we took out of such a model, and we just said, hey, all the life cycles are dealing with risks, and the risk list is just a specific report on that. So these reports are life cycle specific and transient objects, of course, and they would be blue then as well. But if possible, we always kept the same names. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, great, thank you. And then we have a question specifically about the Applied Safe product. Can that support any sorry, I'm losing any compliance, any particular type of compliance?
Yes, we have bindings to automotive spice, to IEC 62304, to the Chapter 11, to the FDA requirements, and to CMMI. We have a complete binding of course, as well. It was when we built Applied Safe, we started with reaching CMMI maturity level 5 out of the box. This was our goal, and since then we have learned that most reference models, they're basically asking for the same things, having a defined process. That's like the first question from the quality model, having a defined process, know what you're doing, having defined tools, practices, and metrics in place, and prove that you have done so.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Peter. So we've come to the end of our questions. I want to thank Peter very much for giving us a great presentation today. And I'd like to thank you all very much for taking the time to join us today on this Wednesday, and we hope you found this session of value. And as mentioned before, we will be sending out the recording of the presentation as well as the slides, and we hope to see you soon in one of our other webinars. We appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.